The second half of the 1990s was a time of joy. A time of humor.
Go fish! Go fish yourself!
A time of emotion.
Have a great time in space, Slimy.
A time of triumph.
Come on, let's get in there! Who's with me?
Danielle Atron? You're under arrest.
A time of magic.
Ladies, let me see ya. All right.
And a time of new technology.
You are a toy! You are a toy!
Introducing Sega Saturn.
The Sony PlayStation.
The future of the Dreamcast. Will it take the lead in the console wars?
Virtual Boy. See it now in 3D.
Go anywhere you want to go. Do anything you want to do.
Welcome back to Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario. Once again, Super Mario Bros. Has hit a major milestone. 40 years old! Plus, Super Mario World and the Super Famicom are turning 35 this year. Earlier this year, we took a look back at the Super Mario series of the first half of the 1990s, including the groundbreaking Super Mario World. Now we're ready to cover the Super Mario games released from 1995 to 1999. It's Episode 5 of the Chronicles of Mario. As the console wars between the Super Nintendo Entertainment System and the Sega Genesis raged on, other companies began putting out consoles of greater processing power. Atari released the 64-bit Jaguar, and the 3DO company released the 32-bit CD-based 3DO interactive multiplayer.
With 64 bits, 3D graphics, real-world animation, and lightning speed that you can only get with Jaguar, which is more advanced!
Kart, can you repeat the question?
Jaguar! Jaguar! Jaguar!
Neither system sold well enough, but they did intimidate Nintendo and Sega. Plus, there was anticipation over a 32-bit console from Sony, which stemmed from failed partnerships with Nintendo and Sega. In response to this competition, Sega had already put out the Mega CD/Sega CD, an expensive but revolutionary attachment to the Mega Drive/Genesis that played games using inexpensive CDs. But it wasn't enough. So in November of 1994, they released another add-on, the 32X, a mushroom-shaped adapter that turned the Genesis into a 32-bit console. Unfortunately, the add-on flopped even more than the Sega CD. Only 800,000 units were sold. Furthermore, around the same time the 32X launched, Sega had launched the Sega Saturn in Japan to much greater success. 2 weeks later, the system's primary competitor hit Japan, the Sony PlayStation. As for Nintendo, they began stealing the show for the 1994 holiday season. As on the same day the 32X launched, Nintendo released probably their most revolutionary Super NES game yet, Donkey Kong Country. Needless to say, it was a massive hit and a smack in the face to the competition. Sega was after power with the 32X, but Nintendo was able to push their 16-bit system to its limits by providing pre-rendered graphics in Donkey Kong Country, thanks in large part to Rare, as well as Silicon Graphics. But this wasn't Nintendo's first attempt at pushing hardware limits. In 1992, in a collaboration with Argonaut Software, they released X, a Japan-exclusive space combat simulation game for the Game Boy. A year later, they collaborated again and released Star Fox, a rail shooter on the Super Nintendo. It was the first Nintendo title to use polygonal graphics. This was achieved through a powerful coprocessor in the cartridge, the Super FX chip, codenamed the Mario chip during development. It ran at a frequency of 10.5 MHz. Star Fox received rave reviews and sold like crazy. This success led to a sequel and a new and more advanced Super FX chip. The Star Fox sequel ultimately never came out for the Super NES, and not at all until 2017 for the SNES Classic Edition. But the new Super FX chip would carry over to several other Super NES games, including a prequel to the Super Mario series. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
スーパーファミコンがテレビゲームのグラフィックに今新たな命を吹き込んだ。絵のぬくもりが新しい、大きな動きが楽しい。コンピュータグラフィックスドローイングが生み出したスーパーマリオの最新作ヨッシーアイランド。今度のマリオは赤ちゃんだ。
After we finished Super Mario World, it looked to us like Yoshi had a lot of room to grow as a character, and we started thinking about making a game with him. It was all decided pretty quickly from there. Shigeru Miyamoto.
As stated in Part 1, Super Mario World, a launch title for the Super Famicom/Super Nintendo, introduced Yoshi, a little green dinosaur who carried Mario on his journey. He became one of the highlights of the game, especially among women and children. The success led him to getting his own puzzle games on Nintendo platforms. With that, Mario's creator, Shigeru Miyamoto, turned to Yoshi's creator, Shigefumi Hino, about making an original project.
I entered a period of thinking up all sorts of projects, experimenting with them, and canning them over and over. It got to the point where I thought if the next project fell through, I couldn't stay at the company. Shigefumi Hino.
Just then, Hino came up with the idea of Yoshi being the main protagonist of a game. He began thinking of making the game a bit of a spin-off of the Super Mario series. The story begins with Kamek, a Magic Koopa serving under a young Bowser, attacking a stork, who is carrying two baby brothers, Mario and Luigi. He kidnaps Luigi, but is unable to find Mario. As a result of the attack, Mario has fallen onto the back of Yoshi, a friendly green dinosaur, on Yoshi's island. It's up to Yoshi to guide Mario across the island and save Luigi from Bowser. Bowser's intent is to abduct both brothers to prevent a future Kamek has foreseen, the Mario brothers stymieing Bowser's schemes. Along the journey, Yoshi faced off against various enemies. Aside from the usual suspects, there were also Shy Guys and Snippets from the Western Super Mario Bros. 2. New enemies also appeared, such as Fly Guys, Shy Guys with propellers on their heads, the Seagull-like Goonies, the Crab-like Clawdaddies, and Toadies, a group of 4 lackeys sent by Kamek to kidnap baby Mario every time Yoshi took a hit. And Mario would start wailing profusely until he was rescued, all while Yoshi's star power was drained. Once it hit 0, or if Yoshi fell into an endless pit, the player would lose a life. A different colored Yoshi tackled a different level in each world. 1. Green, also playable in the extra levels, the mini battles, and the final boss stage. 2. Pink. 3. Light blue. 4. Yellow, always taking on forts. 5. Purple Yoshi. 6. Brown. 7. Red. And 8. Blue, but not in World 6, as that is the green Yoshi's job. Bosses are battled in every fort and castle. Bert the Bashful, Salvo the Slime, Bigger Boo, the Potted Ghost, Prince Froggy, Naval Piranha, Marching Mild, Hookbill the Koopa, Sluggy the Unshaven, Raphael the Raven, Tap Tap the Red Nose, and of course, Baby Bowser himself. The game had 6 worlds with 8 stages each. In each stage, Yoshi collected red coins, stars to add extra time to Yoshi's countdown timer, and special flowers which were added to the Gold Ring Roulette. At the end of each stage, these items were tallied up and converted to points for a maximum of 100. Scoring 100 on each stage unlocked a bonus challenge and a difficult extra stage. The bonus challenge was usually played if the Gold Ring Roulette landed on one of the flowers, but with a total world score of 800, the bonus challenge could be played at any time. The type of bonus challenge a player got depended on the world they were in. In addition to the 54 levels and bonus challenges, there was also an opening level only played once, something not very common in a Mario game. This level was called Welcome to Yoshi's Island. On August 5th, 1995, Yoshi's Island was released in Japan. The game received an abundance of praise. Over 1 million copies were sold by the end of the year, and there was no doubt it would get a release in the rest of the world soon. By 1995 in North America, the next generation of home video game consoles was well underway. In May of 1995, just 6 months after the release of the ill-fated 32X, Sega of America President Tom Kalinske had announced at the first Electronics Entertainment Expo that Sega's 32-bit platform, the Sega Saturn, was already out in a limited number of store chains, priced at $400.
Sega Saturn is not only here now, it's out there.
To be fair, this was not Kalinske's call to make. Sega of Japan had pressured him to do so, despite his warnings. After that announcement, Sony announced the impending release of their competitor, the Sony PlayStation, on September 9th, at a price of
$299.
Much to the delight of eager consumers, especially those who felt burned by Sega's recent offerings. As for Nintendo, their Project Reality console, the Ultra 64, was delayed until 1996. But to hold gamers over, Nintendo put out their latest device, the Virtual Boy, a tabletop console capable of displaying graphics in full stereoscopic 3D, but under a red tint. Needless to say, it became a massive flop. But they maintained support for the Game Boy and the Super Nintendo. Among their upcoming games, Donkey Kong Land, Kirby's Dream Land 2, Donkey Kong Country 2, Killer Instinct, and of course Yoshi's Island, which was given the extended title, Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. This was most likely done for the sake of brand recognition. It was released on October 4th, 1995 in North America, and the very next day, it hit Europe. Advertisements for Yoshi's Island in North America referred to the graphic technology of the new game as Morphmation. However, these ads also included one of the edgiest commercials Nintendo ever put out anywhere in the world. This commercial featured a guy at a restaurant eating endlessly as the commercial describes how much is packed into the game. By the end of the commercial, the guy has eaten so much food, his stomach literally blows up in a manner similar to a sketch from Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. Disgusting! Later versions of the commercial had the explosion shot replaced with a clean shot of other customers looking on, making it sound like the floor may have collapsed under the guy's weight. But ads didn't really matter much to anyone who bought the game. Yoshi's Island was a hit with critics. In issue 34 of Die Hard Game Fan, Matt Taylor thought it could be, quote, possibly the best platform game of all time. Nintendo Power even gave Yoshi and Baby Mario a spot in the cover of issue 77. However, there was one issue with the game that many a critic would agree to: Baby Mario's repetitive crying when Yoshi took a hit. Some hackers in modern times will release a patch that would remove the crying. Despite these shortcomings, Yoshi's Island went on to sell over 4 million copies worldwide, and it was a good way for Nintendo to keep the Super Nintendo alive before the release of their next console. The Morphmation technology helped to push the 16-bit console to its limits. Nintendo would even bundle the game with the newly designed Super NES in 1997. I wasn't into Yoshi's Island when it was new, but when I finally played it, I was quite impressed with the graphics. But I did find the task of unlocking the extra stages a real challenge, maybe even more than the special stages in Super Mario World. Nonetheless, Yoshi's Island, though not technically a Super Mario game, still plays like one and holds up well. The success of Yoshi's Island ultimately led to a few follow-ups and remakes on later Nintendo platforms. Yoshi's Island would be the last Mario platformer released for the Super Nintendo, but Mario would still have one last major hurrah, this time in a whole new genre, one many a gamer would never have expected. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
When is too much too much? To find out, we crammed everything into Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. 60 more levels, massive enemies, huge Yoshi tricks, all served up with the latest graphic technology, Morphmation.
No more.
Sure you don't have room for another little bonus level? Super Mario World 2, only on the Super NES. Still the big one.
RPG Super Mario RPG ロールプレイングゲームやったことない人も OK マリオと旅に出ようドラマを作ろうロールプレイングゲームやり尽くした人も Come on 満足させますマリオです Oh yeah スーパーファミコンソフトスーパーマリオ RPG スーパーファミコンが4000円安くなるクーポン券付き
We're all familiar with Square, a leading developer of role-playing games. Most notably, Final Fantasy, Secret of Mana, and Chrono Trigger. All these series made a killing in Japan. However, during the 80s and 90s, Square was struggling to carry the success overseas. In 1992, after Final Fantasy IV, released in North America as Final Fantasy II, failed to catch on in the States, Square released Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, a basic RPG to introduce Western gamers to the genre. Sadly, sales didn't meet expectations. There were plans to release Final Fantasy V in the West as Final Fantasy III, and later as a standalone title, due to the differing nature of the game. But the game's overwhelming difficulty caused Square to nix the Western release entirely. Instead, in 1994, they brought Final Fantasy VI to the West as Final Fantasy III. Sales improved, but not well enough in the West. Square knew they couldn't tackle a successful RPG in the West on their own. Their first choice? Seek the help of the industry's leading character, Mario. In 1994, Square approached Nintendo about a collaboration. Make a role-playing game featuring Mario. Shigeru Miyamoto, Mario's creator, was interested. He had been into Square's work and had always been interested in implementing Mario into other genres. Mario previously had games of his own in other genres, such as the puzzle game Dr. Mario and the racing game Super Mario Kart. And he knew Square wanted an RPG with worldwide appeal to both children and adults. During a pitch meeting at Square headquarters, Miyamoto was shown a concept art of Mario wielding a sword. Seeing as most of Square's RPGs had a fantasy setting, it would probably have made sense. But Miyamoto didn't think it was the right idea. He figured Mario would be better equipped with a hammer, a weapon he used in Donkey Kong. Nintendo and Square continued discussing the characters, the story, and the setting. Eventually, they all agreed to the collaboration. During the summer, development of the game was underway. Miyamoto took on the role of producer of the game. Directing the game was Yoshihiko Maekawa and Chihiro Fujioka. Maekawa worked as a field planner for Final Fantasy VI. Fujioka wrote the story for Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Fumiaki Fukuya, who had been the main programmer for Live Alive, was the head programmer for Super Mario RPG. Ryo Moto, the ring menu programmer of Secret of Mana, became the battle programmer. Providing the soundtrack was Yoko Shimomura, a music and sound composer who had previously worked with Capcom, most notably Street Fighter II and Final Fight. In 1993, she left Capcom and joined Square in hopes of writing classical-style music for fantasy RPGs. The first graphical idea was to make Super Mario RPG like the Final Fantasy games, 2D sprites with a top-down view. But they eventually shifted to pre-rendered 3D style graphics, giving the game an isometric view rather than a simple top-down view. To utilize this extra power, Nintendo recommended adding an additional chip, the SA-1. This chip had more processing power than the Super Famicom/Super NES CPU, and its RAM was faster. The graphics could be rendered faster and allow for more on-screen characters. To fully implement these graphics, Square utilized the workstations provided by Silicon Graphics that Rare used to develop Donkey Kong Country. A year after development began, Square had a prototype ready, but they wondered whether Mario should use weapons and magic or his usual jumps and hammer strikes. At the 1995 V-Jump Festival, where the game was unveiled, Chihiro Fujioka asked the audience whether they should give Mario his hammers and jumps or new swords and magic. The crowd applauded most to the hammers and jumps. The game was given a beta build later that year and shown to the offices at Nintendo of America in Redmond, Washington. The staff was taken aback. Some thought the idea silly. By 1996, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars was ready. Everything was jam-packed into a 32 megabit cartridge. It was released in Japan on March 9, 1996, just 3 months before the launch of the Nintendo 64. The game came packaged with a coupon for a 4,000 yen discount when purchasing a Super Famicom. Although details aren't concrete, I'm going to assume that with the Nintendo 64 on the way, Nintendo wanted to sell through backstocks so as to make way for their next console. The game went on to sell over 1.46 million copies in Japan alone and became the country's best-selling game of 1996. When it came time to bring the game over to the West, translation duties were given to Ted Woolsey, who was known for translating Square RPGs to the West. During the month the game was released in Japan, Super Mario RPG was featured on the cover of Nintendo Power issue 82 and was previewed in the issue's Epic Center. Super Mario RPG was released in North America on May 15, 1996, at a price of $75. Critics heaped praise on the game. Langston Wirtz Jr. of the Charlotte Observer said,
"At $75, the 16-bit Mario RPG is expensive, but packed with hours of new gameplay. The all-action, all-the-time format of the past Mario games is missed, but RPG should eventually build an audience all its own."
Sadly, Europe never got a release, at least not on the Super Nintendo. There were several reasons as to why. 1. The extra cost of the SA1 chip. 2. The extra time to make new translations, especially with the Nintendo 64 less than a year away. 3. Low projected sales, seeing as role-playing games had even less of a presence in Europe than in North America at the time. And 4. Optimization for PAL televisions. Now to the game. The story opens with Mario battling Bowser to free Princess Peach, but in the midst of this battle, Exor, a massive sentient sword, pierces through Bowser's castle, sending everyone flying in many a direction. Mario soon discovers that the Smithy Gang is behind this. Exor has also shattered Star Road, which grants wishes, into 7 pieces. Mario's job is to find all 7 star pieces and defeat the gang. Along the way, Mario meets up with new friends who join his party. Mallow, a cloud-like being who claims to be a tadpole. Geno is a star spirit taking the form of a wooden doll. In addition, Princess Peach and even Bowser join the party. To acquire the star pieces, you'll be traversing through various areas and battling many bosses who guard them. Most of them are guarded by the Smithy Gang. The Smithy Gang is led by Smithy, a robotic blacksmith bent on domination. Exor happens to be his right-hand sword. Well, kind of. Commander Clay Morton is a pogo stick-like sword guarding the light blue star piece in the Mushroom Castle. Bowyer is a bow-like commander who fires arrows at his enemies. He guards the green star piece in the forest maze. Punchinello guards the orange star piece in the coal mines. Though his ambitions are foolish, he has no connection to the Smithy Gang whatsoever. The purple star piece is the only one not guarded by an enemy. Instead, it's hidden on top of Star Hill. Johnny Jones, the leader of a band of pirate sharks, guards the blue star piece in the sea. But after he's beaten, Mario is forced to turn over the star piece to Yardovich, a commander of the Smithy Gang, and the party must battle him to get the star piece back. The Tsar Dragon guards the red star piece in the Barrel Volcano, but even after he's beaten, the piece is swiped by a team of 5 multicolored Smithy Gang warriors, the Axum Rangers, a play on the popular Super Sentai and Power Rangers series. Mario and his party battle them on their battleship, the Blade. Once all 5 in their ship are beaten, the Blade explodes. The final star piece, the yellow one, is worn by Smithy himself. In his boss battle, he has 2 forms. The first is his standard form, but once that's done with, he takes on his true form, a skull-headed shape-shifting robot. This head has 5 different formations, Normal, which only lasts for the first few turns before he changes into another. The tank head has devastatingly powerful physical attacks and defenses, but with a weakness to lightning. The magic head is powerful in magical offense and no elemental weakness, but low defenses. The mask head is very high on defense and protection and heals Smithy over time. However, it's vulnerable to ice-based moves. The treasure head strikes its enemies with a status ailment. However, fire is its greatest weakness. Regardless of which head he uses, once Smithy is defeated, he explodes, leaving only the yellow star piece intact. Once that's done, Star Road is back to normal, and peace is restored. Now, as you can see in this game, there are traditional JRPG elements, but Super Mario RPG also has a timing mechanic when it comes to offense and defense. While attacking, hit A at the right time to deal additional damage to your enemies, and while defending, hit B at the right time to reduce damage you take from your enemies. Square also gave the game some traditional Mario elements, including platforming, collecting coins, classic enemies, and running and jumping. You're also met with minigames to collect helpful items or coins. Plus, you can see a few Easter eggs implemented by Nintendo. In addition, Square added a challenging optional boss known as Culex, who has many references to the Final Fantasy series, including the victory theme when he's defeated. Personally, I love Super Mario RPG. Except for the Pokemon series, it's gone down to be my favorite role-playing game of all time. Granted, I never played it when it was new, and I never even played it on my SNES Classic Edition. But the 2023 remake of the game was what got me into the original Super Nintendo game. It's amazing how much Nintendo and Square put into this game. Sadly, although Super Mario RPG went on to become Square's best-selling game on the Super Nintendo, it would be the last major game they would make exclusively for a Nintendo console for a while. They intended to make a sequel for the Nintendo 64, but once the PlayStation came into the picture, and Sony offered them a lucrative deal to bring Final Fantasy VII to their CD-based console, Nintendo felt betrayed and forbade Square from ever making games for the Nintendo 64. Spiritual sequels to Super Mario RPG eventually came along, most of which were highly successful, even without a true sequel, but we'll get to those in future episodes. Just a few months after Super Mario RPG hit the market, Nintendo finally entered the 5th generation with their latest console, the Nintendo 64. But unlike their competitors, to keep the price of the system down for consumers and reduce piracy and damage, Nintendo stuck with the cartridge format for this generation. Some third-party publishers, including the aforementioned Square, reduced support for this console, fearing they would lose money if their game didn't sell well enough on the console. This gave Sony plenty of leverage worldwide, but Sega not so much outside of Japan. Despite these setbacks, a launch title for the new console managed to take the gaming industry by storm. One that gave Nintendo's mascot more freedom than ever before. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
All was peaceful in the Mushroom Kingdom.
Yo, Smithy the sword shattered the Star Road. Wow! So with his old enemy Bowser and a marshmallow who throws lightning. Mario fought evil wedding cakes and the killer Venus flytraps and recovered the 7 stars!
Grandfather's freaky. Super Mario RPG, only on the system that keeps on kicking. Super NES.
Dig it?
今までのテレビゲームでは実現できなかったコンピューターグラフィックスアニメーションの迫力。任天堂64。3D スティックを使って初めて体験できる新しいゲームの世界。
Here we go!
任天堂64。ゲームが変わる。64が変える。
I first had the idea to do a 3D Mario game when I was working on Star Fox. That was 5 years ago. I had always wanted to do a game that recreated an entire world in miniature, like miniature trains. When I saw what could be done with 3D modeling on the Star Fox game, I knew we could do much more. Shigeru Miyamoto.
The production of the Super Mario 3D game began in September of 1994 at Nintendo's Entertainment Analysis and Development Division. Director duties were given to Shigeru Miyamoto. His longtime companion Takashi Tezuka was brought on as assistant director, along with Yoshiaki Koizumi, who had previously worked on Super Mario Kart and Yoshi's Island. Koizumi was also responsible for the 3D animation, with the help of Satoru Takezawa. Koji Kondo returned as composer, with Yoji Inagaki handling sound design. The new 3D Mario game may have been inspired by what Nintendo had come up with during the 1992 Summer Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. At the show, Nintendo presented a talking 3D Mario head generated by Silicon Graphics, the same company that would help develop the reality coprocessor for the Nintendo 64. The voice was provided by actor Charles Martinet, who would go on to lend his voice to many video games. His voice was heard in Sierra Online's Police Quest Open Season, released in 1993 for PCs. Martinet would then go on to provide the voice of several characters in Nintendo's Super Punch-Out for the Super NES.
Yay!
He then brought his Mario voice to the CD-ROM version of Mario Teaches Typing, as well as Mario Game Gallery for PCs. With the Nintendo 64's extravagant power, voice acting was now possible for the 3D Mario game. So Shigeru Miyamoto turned to Martinet to lend his voice to Mario in the new game.
There's no particularly detailed background or anything, but yeah, it's given that Mario is an Italian-American from Brooklyn, New York. That voice was actually done by a professional voice actor. He did Mario's voice 5 or 6 years ago at a video game event. By the way, Mario talks a lot more in the American version of Mario 64. He says, "Okie dokie," and more. Peach also speaks. We had more time before the American release, so we improved the game. Shigeru Miyamoto.
Although Martinet wasn't expecting such an opportunity, he nonetheless agreed. In October of 1995, at Nintendo's Shoshinkai trade show, the new Mario game, now named Super Mario 64, was at 50% completion and was first shown as a playable prototype. It was even covered in North American gaming magazines, including GamePro and Electronic Gaming Monthly, just like Super Mario World. The original intent was for the Nintendo 64 and Mario 64 to be released in time for the 1995 holiday season. But Miyamoto thought his team could do more with Super Mario 64, so with all that, the game and the console were delayed for about 6 months. During this delay, composer Koji Kondo did his best with the music. The Nintendo 64, unlike its 16-bit predecessor, had no dedicated sound chip. Instead, it relied on the Reality coprocessor's Reality Signal processor, often with the help of the NEC VR4300 to process the data. It could, in theory, mix 100 audio channels, though this required the whole system's resources. With the new 3D environment, Super Mario 64 gave Nintendo's mascot far more freedom than he ever had in previous games. With the use of the Nintendo 64 controller's analog stick, Mario could now run around in circles. As usual, the A button would make him jump. Pressing A upon landing let him jump higher, and a third press of the button let him perform a forward somersault. The B button let him punch or kick if he was jumping. Pressing B 3 times let him kick on the third time. The same button also let Mario grab certain items. He could also jump off a wall as he hit it, also known as a wall kick. He could also perform long jumps, backward somersaults, slide, crouch, slide kick, and ground pound. Some of these moves required pressing the Z button on the back of the controller. The goal of Super Mario 64 was to collect 120 Power Stars, which Bowser had hidden among the paintings of the Mushroom Kingdom. 105 of the stars were hidden in the game's 15 levels. Level 1, Bob-omb Battlefield, was riddled with Goombas, Bob-ombs, and the vicious Chain Chomp. a rabid dog-like enemy that debuted in Mario 3. Waiting on top of the mountain was the Big Bob-omb. Grabbing him from the back and knocking him to the ground of the ring 3 times caused him to explode, revealing a Power Star. Other missions in this level included ground-pounding the log to which the chain chomp is chained, racing a large Koopa Troopa known as Koopa the Quick, collecting 8 red coins, and collecting 100 coins total. The missions of finding the red coins and 100 coins carried over to the other levels as well. The red coin missions also appeared in secret missions, as well as all 3 Bowser levels. Level 2, Womp's Fortress, which required at least 1 Power Star to unlock. A tall fortress in the sky, which begins with a battle against the giant rectangular Womp King. He would try to slam on Mario, but Mario would stomp on his back 3 times to defeat him and get his star. After he was beaten, a climbable tower appeared in his place, with a star on the top. Other missions included busting a wall by shooting from a cannon, and riding an owl known as Hoot to an airborne caged island. Level 3, Jolly Roger Bay, requiring 3 stars. A cove where a sunken pirate ship lay, guarded by a giant moray eel, Unagi. After swimming close to it and then bobbing up to the surface, the eel left its nesting place, allowing Mario to swim inside and open 4 treasure chests in a specific order so as to bring the ship to surface and clear all the water out, allowing Mario to make his way to the block containing the star. Other star missions included grabbing a star from the tip of the eel's tail, opening treasure chests in a cave, and shooting from a cannon to a stone pillar. Level 4, Cool Cool Mountain, which also required 3 stars, was a snow-covered mountain. Among the challenges, going down the cabin snow slide, racing a big penguin in that same slide, reuniting a baby penguin with its mother, and giving a snowman head a new body. Level 5, Big Boo's Haunt, was unlocked after collecting 12 stars, but this was not hidden in a painting. Instead, in the courtyard are numerous boos. Ground pounding the biggest one opened the cage, allowing Mario to enter the level. The level is rife with spiders, Mr. Eyes, floating chairs, and the mad piano. Missions include taking out smaller boos to unlock the battle with the Big Boo for his star. One could also battle him a second time in the Big Boo's merry-go-round and a third time on the balcony. After collecting 8 stars, the first Bowser level was unlocked, Bowser in the Dark World. The winding path featured obstacles such as electrifying amps and floating platforms. The warp pipe at the end led to the first battle with Bowser. Mario had to grab Bowser by the tail while avoiding his fire breath. Once he grabbed Bowser, he swung him around and tossed him. If he was thrown at one of the spiky orbs around the platform, the orb exploded and Bowser was knocked out, giving Mario the big key leading to the basement, which led to 4 more levels. Level 6, Hazy Maze Cave, was an underground 2-floor labyrinth with traps, bottomless pits, and dead ends. Missions included riding atop Dory, a Loch Ness monster-like creature, traversing a maze of toxic smoke, and wall-kicking onto a ledge in the room with rolling rocks. Level 7, Lethal Lava Land, was a fire-based land surrounding a small volcano. Star missions included battling the Big Bully, traversing the volcano, and riding on a spinning log. Level 8, the desert-based Shifting Sandland. Missions included catching a star from a large bird known as Klepto, catching a star from the top of a pyramid, and even a few missions inside the pyramid, including traveling to the topmost platform and battling Irock, a boss with a pair of large stone hands with an eye in each palm. After collecting 30 stars, Mario entered Level 9, Dire Dire Docks, another water level. In order to access the next Bowser level, Mario had to swim all the way to the second area and find the Power Star atop Bowser's submarine. Other missions of this level included swimming through 5 consecutive rings through a jet stream or from a manta ray, and opening a pattern of treasure chests. In the second Bowser level, Bowser in the Fire Sea, Mario tackled a series of narrow pathways surrounded by boiling lakes of lava. Other obstacles consisted of, but aren't limited to, shifting platforms, flamethrowers, amps, and a few bullies. At the end of the stage is the warp leading to the next Bowser battle. The object is the same as the Dark World. Swing Bowser at one of the spiky orbs to knock him out, and he'd give you the key to the top floor. However, Bowser now had the ability to cause the ring to tilt, warp from one spot to another, shoot smaller fireball projectiles, and even charge at Mario. Once the top floor key was obtained, Mario unlocked levels 10 through 13. Level 10, Snowman's Land, was reachable only by jumping into a wall in the mirror room. The mirror provided a clue as to where the entrance was. Snowman's Land, like Cool Cool Mountain, was another snow-based level, this time with greater challenges. Climbing to the top of the giant snowman's head, searching for a star in an igloo, and battling with the Chill Bully. Level 11, Wet Dry World, alternated between how much water flooded the area, depending on how high or low Mario was when he jumped into the painting. Mario collected stars by riding arrow lifts, reaching the top of the uptown, finding 5 hidden secrets, riding up the elevator shaft, and swimming to the downtown area. Enemies here included purple bob-ombs known as Chuckyas, heave-hoes that flung Mario if he stood on their platforms, and spider-like skeeters. Level 12, Tall Tall Mountain, self-explanatory. Star missions consisted of climbing to the peak of the mountain, catching the Ukiki monkey at the peak, taking a ride down the secret slide, shooting to a giant mushroom platform, and finding a star behind the waterfall. Along the way, there was an additional Ukiki who, if grabbed, swiped Mario's cap. Lousy monkey. Once he stole the cap, he was harder to grab, but once grabbed, he was forced to return it. Level 13, Tiny Huge Island. This stage alternated between large and small, depending on the size of the painting Mario went through. There were also shrinker pipes, a variation of the warp pipe, which adjusted Mario's size. Star missions included battling against giant piranha flowers, reaching the top of the huge island, a rematch against Koopa the Quick, finding 5 secrets on the tiny island, and battling the massive Wiggler. After collecting 50 stars, Mario unlocked the last 2 levels, as well as an endless staircase leading to the final Bowser stage. But the only way to actually reach it was to obtain 70 stars. Level 14, the Tick-Tock Clock, took place within a large grandfather clock. Depending on the time of the clock when Mario went inside, the speeds of the internals would alter, or even freeze altogether. Missions consisted of finding a star in a cage, riding a clock hand, grabbing a star on top of a thwomp, and jumping on moving bars with precision. Level 15, the final main course, was the biggest of them all, Rainbow Ride, taking place high in the sky. Mario's challenging missions included riding a floating carpet on a rainbow road to the large floating rainbow cruiser with a star on its bowsprit, riding to the top of a giant house, jumping off pyramid platforms, crossing swings, and shooting from the cruiser's cannon to a platform guarded by a Chuckya. In addition to the main courses, there were 15 additional stars. Some were found in secret areas, mostly requiring finding 8 red coins. One secret area, the Princess's Secret Slide, had 2 missions, to slide all the way to the bottom and to finish the course in under 21 seconds. 3 toads also each held onto a star. There were also the 3 Switch Cap courses, where Mario hit a giant switch similar to the Switch Palaces in Super Mario World in order to unlock the power-up caps that gave Mario temporary abilities. The Wing Cap, which allowed Mario to fly, the Invisibility Cap, which made Mario invisible and pass through certain objects, and the Metal Cap, giving Mario extra weight and durability, and the ability to walk underwater. A vast majority of the Secret Star missions required finding 8 red coins, including all 3 Bowser stages. In addition, 2 stars were held by Mips, a golden rabbit who bounced around in the basement, one after collecting 15 stars, and the other after collecting 50. After obtaining 70 stars, the endless stairs were no longer endless, and Mario entered the final stage, Bowser in the Sky. Mario traversed through moving platforms, seesaws, and poles, and faced obstacles such as Chuckyas amps, bob-ombs, womps, goombas, and flamethrowers. On the final platform, a strong gust of wind would constantly attempt to impede Mario's progress as he made his way to the warp pipe, leading to the final battle with Bowser. Bowser was now given all the abilities he had from the first two battles, except the battlefield would no longer tilt if he stomped on it. Instead, he released a series of shockwaves upon Mario. He would also breathe a large fire breath into the air, scattering fireballs in all directions, including bouncing blue ones that split into 3 porbus. Furthermore, instead of a single spiked orb, Mario had to throw Bowser at 3 to beat him. After the first two, Bowser broke off the entire outer edge of the battlefield, reforming it into the shape of a star. This made tossing Bowser at a third orb much more difficult, requiring more strength and precision. But once he hit 3 orbs, Bowser was finally defeated and forced to surrender the Jumbo Star to Mario. When Mario touched the star, he was given the wing cap and flew all the way back to the castle grounds to set Princess Peach free from the stained glass window above the entrance. After all 120 stars were collected, Mario could finally access the cannon outside the castle, allowing it to shoot Mario to the castle roof where Yoshi awaited, awarding Mario with extra lives to bring the life counter up to 100. In addition, with the wing cap, Mario could also fly around the castle. After 6 months of delay, the game was ready. The game was showcased at the 1996 Electronics Entertainment Expo in Los Angeles, with 30 Nintendo 64s set up for demonstration. Many people were lined up to take turns. Later, Nintendo began manufacturing the first 500,000 consoles. At last, on June 23, 1996, the Nintendo 64 officially launched in Japan, with 3 titles to go along with it. Pilot Wings, a follow-up to the flight simulation game released for the Super Nintendo, Saikyo Habu Shogi, a virtual board game, and of course, Super Mario 64.
It's me, Mario!
The first shipment of 300,000 consoles were sold out on the first day, 3 times more than the PlayStation sold on its first weekend in North America. But unlike with the Super Famicom 6 years prior, launch day was far less chaotic. Nintendo cast a much wider retail network, even shipping units to convenience stores. A majority of the remaining 200,000 were reserved in advance after they shipped over the next week. Reviews and sales were glowing over Super Mario 64. Famitsu magazine gave it a near-perfect score of 39 out of 40, and the game sold nearly as quickly as the console itself. But would the new console and the new Mario game fare as well, if not better, outside of Japan? Well, gamers did anticipate the impending release. Some rental chains found out, imported the console and games, and rented them out to customers. Some consumers even went the extra mile and paid as much as $700 plus shipping at import shops. Nintendo of America had originally planned for the Nintendo 64 to retail for $250, but by the summer of 1996, when word spread of Sega and Sony's 32-bit offerings were discounted to $200, Nintendo decided to cut the price of the Nintendo 64 by $50. It would also be shipped alongside Pilot Wings 64 and Super Mario 64, each of which would retail for $70. The release date was set for September 30th, but Nintendo soon moved it up a day earlier as the 30th fell on a school night. The system and launch titles were shipped to stores ahead of the street date and kept under lock and key. However, in a move not authorized by Nintendo, a KB toy store jumped the gun on September 26th and sold the console immediately. Once other retailers followed suit, Nintendo decided it best to give the early launch the green light. It was backed by a $54 million marketing campaign. Unlike with the previous consoles, the Nintendo 64 and its launch titles were all sold separately rather than bundled. Despite this setback, as well as the expensive, albeit faster and more durable, cartridge format, Nintendo sold 500,000 units during its first month in North America alone. It took the PlayStation 90 days to reach that mark, and the Sega Saturn nearly a year. Super Mario 64, one of the launch titles, played a big role in pushing sales. Electronic Gaming Monthly not only gave it a score of 38 out of 40, but they also gave it awards. September Game of the Month, a Gold Award, Nintendo 64 Game of the Year, Adventure Game of the Year, Best Graphics, and Game of the Year overall. It went on to sell over 2 million copies in North America alone by the end of the year, and was the best-selling game of 1996. Overall, despite the Nintendo 64 falling behind the PlayStation, it managed to overtake the Sega Saturn 3-1 worldwide, and Super Mario 64, having sold 11.9 million copies worldwide, was not only the system's best-selling game, but that of the entire 5th generation. Not even the PlayStation's bestseller, Gran Turismo, could outsell Mario. The PlayStation only sold better simply because it had more games at a lower price point, and even to this day, unlike Nintendo, Sony had the stacks to absorb losses on hardware. Nintendo was right not to take risks with the Nintendo 64, despite sacrificing their spot as the #1 console manufacturer at the time. They didn't need it. Super Mario 64 gave the Mario series a whole new meaning. The game truly defined freedom. Gamers were no longer bound by time limits, and they were allowed to explore whole new worlds, and every world was well worth exploring over and over again, even when you start with no stars. Super Mario 64 was a huge hit for me, my sister, and my cousins as the millennium was approaching its climax. I got my copy and a Nintendo 64 for Christmas of 1998, the exact same Christmas the Kuzma siblings got theirs. Seriously. I just didn't know it at the time, seeing as there was no YouTube or social media back then. I can't find a home video of that Christmas, but I can tell you that even though I was elated with my new console, it was nowhere near the level of excitement Brandon and Rachel had. As for Mario 64, my family and I would discuss how to obtain which stars before I ultimately picked up a few strategy guides to help. However, up until I got older, I was reluctant to ever explore Jolly Roger Bay, and it's not too hard to figure out why. When we first saw that eel, my sister and I thought it was merely a red shark stuck in the sunken ship's window. But once I swam up, then back down, we finally saw its whole body swimming around the ship, and it was intimidating to say the least. It only gets worse. After obtaining the star from the ship, we were met with what I consider the most dreaded mission, even though it was fairly easy. Can the eel come out to play? The title itself was eerie, but then, and please look away for the next few seconds if you can't bear it, once we got close to the eel, the Big Boo in Super Mario World was one thing, but the eel? Yeesh! Not even the mad piano in Big Boo's haunt was that frightening. Even the actual shark in Dire Dire Docks, despite dealing just as much damage as the eel, didn't give me as much chills, seeing as it was smaller and never opened its jaws. At any rate, the eel was the very reason I got cold feet in trying to collect all 120 stars. I had to rely on my sister and cousins to do that job for me. But those days of fear pretty much ended once I got the Nintendo DS remake. The eel in that version looked far more goofy and miles less intimidating. Plus, the sunken ship mission was much easier there. But we'll talk more about Super Mario 64 DS in a later video. Now, Mario did reach his peak in 1996 with Mario 64, but as the year was drawing to a close, another Nintendo 64 game would hit the market in Japan with Mario's name attached to it. A sequel to Super Mario Kart. This time it was far more innovative and would redefine and solidify the Mario Kart series as a mainstay in the industry. That game was Mario Kart 64. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
You want to see something really cool? Check this out! What am I, a monkey? You could zoom in, zoom out, change angles. angles. Go anywhere you want to go, do anything you want to do. Here we go! This place is really sweet. Whoa, I'm out of here.
Change the system.
Yo, listen up. We will not live in a two-dimensional world.
We won't go in one direction or zig where we can zag.
We will walk through walls.
We will take a look around us. We will not be confined.
We believe in the path of least limits.
We won't be told how to view the world.
We will experience true freedom.
We will not compromise. We will live the game through our hands. We will be in control of something. We will change the system.
Mario Kart 64いよいよ登場。任天堂64でしか体験できない新しい迫力のバトルレース。2人、3人、4人対戦プレイなら超面白い。マリオカート64ツインカラーのコントローラーとセットで新発売。
Fasten your seatbelts for a 360-degree burnout. Precision handling for 1 to 4 drivers. New Mario Kart 64. It really kicks asphalt.
Welcome to Mario Kart.
Released on December 14, 1996 in Japan, February 10, 1997 in North America, and the summer of 1997 in PAL regions, Mario Kart 64 had far more detail than its predecessor. And rather than having split-screen single-player mode, you could now view it in full screen. Split screen was still available for two-player mode. Each race had only 3 laps. There were 4 cups with 4 courses apiece, and a new roster of characters were available to play as: Mario, Luigi, Peach, Toad, Yoshi, Bowser, Donkey Kong, and Wario. The rank out system, coins, and lives were dropped. Now ranked out players could play as many times as they wanted until they made the top 4. Furthermore, the game allowed up to 4 players to play, but depending on the number of players, changes had to be made to allow for smooth gameplay. Plus, the Mario Grand Prix only allowed for up to 2 players. Any more than that, and they were limited to the versus and battle modes. But with all these changes came more items. There were different versions of already existing items that allowed for multiple uses, such as the Banana Bunch and the triple red and green shells. There were also a few new items, the fake item box, which almost looked real, but if touched, exploded upon contact, sending the racer flying. The glowing super mushroom gave the racer infinite speed boost for a short period of time. And finally, the spiny shell, or blue shell.
Blue shell!
Only obtainable by racers in 4th place or lower. It had the same traits as the red shell, except that its main target was the player in the lead and it dealt more damage. Avoiding it was impossible without invincibility or another racer blocking the way. Once the cup was complete, an award ceremony was held for the top 3 racers. It had 2 endings. One was for when the player placed in the top 3, where the Cheep Cheep presented them their trophy. The other ending was for when the player didn't make the top 3, where the player character watched the top 3, then drove away in shame, only to be followed by a mini bomb cart, which then exploded, sending the character and their cart flying. After finishing first in every course at 150cc speed, the mirror mode was unlocked. letting players race in horizontally flipped versions of the courses at 100cc speed. When Mario Kart 64 was released, reviews were glowing. At their 1997 Editor's Choice Awards, Electronic Gaming Monthly declared it the runner-up for Multiplayer Game of the Year, just behind Saturn Bomberman for the Sega Saturn. My cousin and sister and I would challenge each other in various races. We'd play that game almost every time we hung out while the Nintendo 64 was on the market. And ever since, the Mario Kart series was a staple in my family. Whenever we got a new Nintendo console, a Mario Kart game was an essential addition to our library. And personally, as a result of all the nostalgia, I consider Mario Kart 64 my favorite Mario Kart game of all time. Thanks in large part to Mario Kart 64, multiplayer was a huge factor in the Nintendo 64 selling like hotcakes. It was the only console in the 5th generation to actually have 4 controller ports out of the box. The PlayStation and Saturn each required adapters for extra players, and the 3DO required daisy-chaining controllers for any multiplayer game. Nintendo would carry multiplayer over to the inaugural game of their next series of Mario games. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
50種類のミニゲームがぎっしり。みんなで盛り上がるパーティーゲームできました。任天堂64マリオパーティー。
Yeah, we're getting calls about a wild party over here. Know anything about it? I didn't think so. Which one of you jokers goes by the name Mario?
It's me!
Could you step outside, please?
Welcome to Mario Party, where you and 3 friends battle it out all night long. With 6 adventure boards and 50 mini-games, this party's just getting going. Mario Party, only on Nintendo 64.
But it's me! Mario!
Yeah, tell it to the judge.
Get in or get out.
Mario Party was developed by Hudson Soft, which had gained notoriety in 1983 as the first third-party developer for Nintendo consoles. The game played in the style of a board game. 4 of 6 Mario characters were chosen: Mario, Luigi, Peach, Yoshi, Wario, and Donkey Kong. Each player then bashed randomized blocks for any number 1 through 10. The order of the players was determined by the numbers that came up for each player. High number went first, low number went last. Each player was also given 10 coins. In the game, players bashed a dice block to determine how many spaces they advanced. The spaces consisted of the following: landing on a blue space added 3 coins, while landing on a red space subtracted 3 coins. The green happening space caused an event to occur, depending on the chosen board. The blue chance time space let the player that landed on it play a game of chance time to determine who exchanged what with whom. The blue minigame space let the player play a single player minigame for more coins. The blue mushroom space gave the player a roulette block to determine whether they got a mushroom to give them another dice block, or a poison mushroom to force them to skip their next turn. If a player landed on a red Bowser space, they faced Bowser, who triggered a roulette, which caused the player to either forfeit a large amount of coins, play a minigame to protect their coins, have everyone's coins to be redistributed equally, or play a chance time game to determine who gave up to 30 coins to Bowser. There were also 2 spaces that promised a substantial reward, but neither could be landed on in this game. Passing the star space gave the player a star at the cost of 20 coins. Passing Bowser forced the player to give him up to 40 coins. Passing the Koopa Troopa at the starting line awarded the player 10 coins. Passing a Boo allowed the player to let him take coins from an opponent for free, or a star at the cost of 50 coins. At the end of each turn, the 4 players took on a minigame for coins. Depending on the spaces the players landed on, the game could be for 4 players individually, 1 versus a team of 3, or tag team. Some games even offered bonus coins along the way, regardless of who won it. The game was played in 20, 35, or 50 turns, and during the last 5 turns, the coin values for the red and blue spaces were doubled. After the last minigame, the players were given bonus stars for collecting the most coins in minigames, collecting the most coins overall, and landing on the most happening spaces. After the extra stars were awarded, the player with the most stars or the player with the most coins among tied players won the superstar. After each board, coins and stars were tallied up, and after each of the other default boards were completed at least once, an additional board could be bought for 980 coins. Bowser's Magma Mountain. Once 100 stars were collected, the final board, Eternal Star, was unlocked. Nintendo and Hudson Soft added a few extra features to the game, such as the minigame house, the mushroom shop, and the mushroom bank. In the minigame house, among other features, a player could test their skills in the minigame stadium, a 10-turn star-shaped board with only red and blue spaces, as well as a single minigame space. No coins were awarded or subtracted for landing on the red and blue spaces, and no stars were at stake. Coins were strictly gathered from playing minigames or passing Koopa Troopa. And of course, there was also the Minigame Island Challenge, allowing players to beat various challenges in the 50 minigames. Mario Party was released in Japan on December 18, 1998, February 8, 1999 in North America and Brazil, and March of 1999 in Europe, Australia, and South Africa. Critics loved the game. GameSpot stated, "The games that are enjoyable to play in multiplayer are nowhere near as good in single-player mode. Really, it's that multiplayer competitive spark of screaming at and/or cheering for your friends that injects life into those often simple little games, and without it, they're just simple little games." However, it wasn't all roses for Mario Party. Nintendo faced legal issues over players getting blisters on the palms of their hands because of some minigames that require spinning the control stick around as quickly as possible, like Paddle Battle. Using their thumbs wouldn't produce as desirable results as using their palms. 90 families filed complaints with the New York Attorney General's office, so by 2000, the AG reached an agreement with Nintendo that Nintendo provide up to 4 protective gloves for those who bought the game. Nintendo paid a hefty price for this, $80 million, plus another $75,000 to the AG for the investigation. I myself got a blister when I played some of these control stick spinning games. It took about a week for it to go away. I don't recall getting a protective glove from Nintendo though. Instead, I just made the best of things and was more careful with the stick ever since. At any rate, Mario Party went on to become another favorite in my Nintendo 64 library. Among my favorite minigames, Bobsled Run, Bowl Over, Running Out the Ball, Deep Sea Divers, Whack-A-Plant, and Slot Car Derby. Slot Car Derby actually gave me some Mario Kart vibes, to be honest. Mario Party was so popular it became its own series that still thrives today. I'd talk about Mario Party 2, seeing as it was released in Japan at the end of the 90s, but I'm sorry to say that we only have enough time to talk about one more game in this retrospective. Besides, Mario Party as well as Mario Golf each deserve their own standalone retrospectives. This last game we'll be discussing, it was actually an old game released on newer hardware. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
64
ビビエンパーティーに招待されましたお邪魔しまーす
Welcome Mario Party!
わあみんな盛り上がってる
コントローラーをどうぞ新作ミニゲーム大増量ギュギュッと64種類家族みんなでパーティーだ任天堂64マリオパーティー2
レッツパーティー
64クリアカラーで新登場
Come on, man. Don't you know who my daddy is?
I'm a friend of Mario's. I know the princess. We went to grade school together.
I can't let you in, kid. You're wearing a tie.
It's time for Mario Party 2, rated E for everyone. With 5 new adventure boards and 64 minigames, you're definitely gonna want in.
Pizza!
Him.
I know what some of you are thinking. Why am I wrapping up this retrospective with a port of the game that started my 80s retrospective? Is it really that big a game? Well, in a way it is. Development of the new Super Mario Bros. Port was handled by Nintendo's Research and Development 2 team, known for their development of several Nintendo consoles and peripherals. That included the Color TV game consoles, the Famicom, or Nintendo Entertainment System, and the Super Famicom, or Super Nintendo. They even developed their share of games, including the NES ports of Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. Director duties were given to Toshiaki Suzuki. He and R&D 2 were tasked to create ports of Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening for the Game Boy Color. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe was released on May 10, 1999 in North America. PAL territories would get a release later that year. Japan would never get a physical release. Instead, the game was distributed via Nintendo Power kiosks in Lawson convenience stores for consumers to have the game copied to a flash memory cartridge. Original 1985 mode is basically Super Mario Bros., except the aspect ratio is compressed to accommodate the Game Boy Color screen. Because of this, Mario can backtrack a bit. In addition, between levels, there's also a world map to display the player's progress, and every time Mario clears a castle stage, he would crush the castle to smithereens. Plus, players start with 5 lives instead of 3, akin to Super Mario All-Stars. The 2-player option is also removed. However, if a player presses start on the world map, they can switch between Mario and Luigi. And speaking of Luigi, his sprite has been given his proper color palette. Instead of having a white hat and overalls, they're now his usual green. His fiery palette is given the usual fiery colors. Water and lava are also given animation. Princess Peach and the mushroom retainers also gain talking animations. Peach even gives Mario or Luigi a kiss after the game is beaten. The game also has 3 save slots, something the original game never had. But then again, save batteries weren't a thing back in 1985. If Super Mario Bros. Is beaten after earning 300,000 points, Super Mario Bros. For Super players is unlocked. Actually, this mode is really the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2, or Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, which was never released for the NES in North America due to its difficulty. It has the same changes that were made to the first game, except there's only 1 save slot, Luigi doesn't have his unique traits, the wind is gone, some stages are modified to allow Mario and Luigi to cross some gaps, and worlds 9 through D are gone. Or rather, inaccessible without cheat codes. Why Nintendo went in this direction remains a mystery. But Super Mario Bros. Deluxe is more than just 2 games in one. R&D 2 also added Challenge, allowing a player to take on any of the 32 levels from the original game and collect red coins and Yoshi eggs to try and unlock medals. You vs. Boo is unlocked after a player scores 100,000 points in original 1985 mode. A player races through a stage against a Boo. The stages here are modeled after a level in the game, but with a few modifications, such as adding blocks and springboards, which can help close the gap, as the Boo, with the ability to pass through obstacles, has an advantage. Pressing the select button allowed the player to start the race with a power-up. In these stages are face blocks and 3-2-1 blocks, which either deactivate or activate dotted line blocks and spike traps. The 3-2-1 blocks also have automatic timers, allowing the dotted line blocks to toggle between solid and blank, or in the case of spike traps, solid and spiked, every 3 seconds, or by hitting the block. Every time a Boo is beaten in a stage, it's replaced with one of a different color, green, red, and black, each one moving faster than the preceding Boo. Versus game is similar to You vs. Boo, except it's a 2-player mode, requiring a Game Boy Color link cable and 2 Game Boy Colors, 2 Game Boy Advances, or one of each. There are no Boos, so it's easier to trap your opponents. In addition, if both players lose a life at the same time, the tie goes to the player with the most coins. The toy box contains a variety of toys for the player to use. Most of them are unlockable. Fortune Teller is available from the very beginning. The player picks a random card to receive one of 5 fortunes. Extremely unlucky, unlucky, lucky, very lucky, and extremely lucky. Extremely lucky allows them to start a new game with 10 lives instead of 5. The calendar is also accessible from the start, very self-explanatory, though only 12 dates can be marked at once. The The mystery room has different options that are unlocked by rescuing a captive in original 1985 mode, and they show animations or something to print out on the Game Boy printer. In fact, there's quite a few other printable features in this game. Princess Peach lets the player alter the title screen as they wish. If a Yoshi egg is found in challenge mode, Yoshi is Here is unlocked. It helps players find the other Yoshi eggs in challenge mode's levels via roulette. There's also an album showcasing awards for your achievements. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe was released to incredible sales and happy reception. 2.8 million copies were sold in the United States alone. It became one of the top-selling video games of 2000. Electronic Gaming Monthly scored it 35 out of 40, calling it, quote, a nearly perfect companion to every GBC owner out there. As for me, I consider Super Mario Bros. Deluxe my favorite Game Boy Color exclusive game, bar none. Sorry, Pokemon Crystal. It was actually my first hands-on experience with 8-bit Super Mario Bros. Since I first saw my uncle play that game on his NES in the early 90s. I never actually owned the game when it was new though. I actually borrowed it from one of my cousins, but I had a good time with it even though Lost Levels was still a struggle. The success of Super Mario Bros. Deluxe would go on to spawn remakes of 16-bit Mario games for the Game Boy Color successor. But that's a story for another day. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will wrap up in a moment.
Yeah, I'd like 2 Timmy tacos and a couple
Don't
of
even
mini...
think about it, pal.
Okay, if you don't
You're
have...
not getting anything from me, mister.
Could I speak to your manager, please?
Listen, cheapy, hit the road or it's gonna get ugly. Kiss your toadstool goodbye, loser.
With games like Super Mario Bros. Now in color, you might actually forget where you are.
Oh, who goes there?
Game Boy Color. Get into it.
You can save up those Kool-Aid points and get a Nintendo Game Boy Color system. Or a Mighty Mo's Remote Control Skids 180, free from Kool-Aid. See Cool Points order form for details, and you can mail it in with your Kool-Aid points plus postage and handling. You can save the points and get the stuff. Cool.
Well, we finally reached the end of our 1990s retrospective of Super Mario Bros. Now, I may not have covered everything 90s Mario, because there was just too many to list, and the same will probably apply to the 2000s retrospective, which will probably be a long ways off since I have other projects to work on. At any rate, throughout the 90s, many fans felt Mario had peaked. Pretty much every game of that decade is important for many a reason. Super Mario World helped bring Nintendo into the 16-bit generation. Super Mario Land 2 marked the debut of Wario, the anti-Mario. Mario Paint was an inspiration to many in video games, animation, and music. Super Mario Kart practically reinvented the kart racing genre in gaming. Super Mario All-Stars helped Nintendo master the art of reissuing or remaking games. Wario Land Super Mario Land 3 helped to spawn more games with Wario's name. Yoshi's Island helped keep Nintendo's 16-bit console thriving before the next console came out. Super Mario RPG was Square's first major break in the Western market. Super Mario 64 made the 3D platforming genre a mainstay in the industry. Mario Kart 64 did the same for the Mario Kart series. Mario Party continues to thrive to this very day. And Super Mario Bros. Deluxe was yet another way of keeping the original 8-bit classic relevant to a new generation. This time in its original glory, and on a handheld. Many of these games were among my favorites, not just in the Mario series, but period. Still are to this very day. Thanks again for watching Gaming Delight. Until next time, happy gaming!
thank you so much for playing my game.
See you next time.